Hey there, I'm Eden, a musician and composer from Naarm/Melbourne. And today we're going to be looking at a couple of tips to make your MIDI strings sound realistic. Let's jump straight into it. Alright, for this I'm using the BBC Symphony Orchestra plugin, which is in collaboration with Spitfire Audio. It's a free orchestral plugin. It's a great starting place if you don't have any money, but you want to try your hand at some orchestral compositions or using it as an accompaniment for a song. By the way, BBC Symphony Orchestra is in my guide, which is a free guide to all of the plugins every producer, composer, and musician should know about. If you want it, it's free. Check out the download link in the description. Okay, so we're going to be using this today. To illustrate this video, I've composed a very simple chord progression, broken it up between violins, violas, and cellos. Let's just hear the compositions as it is, and then I'll talk through the different ways I'm going to try and make it sound a bit more realistic and interesting. Let's just hear it now as it is. Okay, so, nothing that special or interesting, but, I kind of like it. So, immediately what sticks out to me about this and what kind of gives it that MIDI string sound is that it's all kind of just the same volume. And one thing about realistic strings, what makes orchestral instruments sound real is their dynamic range. So that's the ability for the instruments to progress from very quiet to very loud over a certain time frame. And often they can make those jumps very quickly. So the first thing I'm going to apply to this short composition is I'm going to automate the volume. Now I'm just going to use the mod wheel on my MIDI keyboard, which I would recommend, or if you've got a fader controller as well that you can link to the volume control, that works as well. If you look in the plugin, they give you two main controls, the dynamics and the expression. This dynamic control is controlled here by the fader. So I'm going to use that first, but it doesn't go quite as quiet as I would like. So I'm also going to automate the volume in Reaper itself. And for that, I'm going to use a fader controller, but I'm going to start here first. So let's do that now. I'm recording all three tracks, by the way, and you'll actually see on this violin track, you can actually see the automation lines. I can actually show you on the other tracks as well. I'd selected all of the tracks and I'd automated that volume all together because I want all the parts to feel together and cohesive. So I've automated that. Now, as you already heard, it changed quite dramatically. I'm going to now automate the volume again, but using my fader controller. Let me just quickly change my camera setup. Cool, that's my faderport 1. I'm gonna now apply the automation to a bus volume and trying to get a bit more dynamic range within the composition. Nice. So that gave it just a little bit more dynamic range. Great, so that's the first thing we can do. Now, In the plugin, we will also notice that it has an expression control. Now the expression, as it says here, adjusts the level of the technique. So in this case, I think it goes from legato to vibrato. So legato is a very smooth sound, and then it goes to like a very, vibrato is like a sound where the string sounds like it's singing almost. Altering the expression is a great way to add more dynamic range and more character to the instrument, particularly for strings, because it introduces a sort of a natural element to how a real string player would play. So let's do that now. So what I'm going to do, because I haven't mapped the expression to my fader controller, I'm just going to manually draw it in. So in Reaper, you hold down Control and you can just use your mouse. I'm just going to follow the automation I did for the volume and the dynamics here and just use my eye. All right, let's just have a quick listen of all that together. Nice. Not bad. Alrighty. So there's one more thing I want to do, and that is look at the tempo of the strings. So unlike modern music, where we have very strict tempos, and music falls into very tight and quantized tempos, we're used to a rigidity in our modern music listening experience. But with strings and with orchestral elements, they sort of flow between different tempos and different speeds. And that gives it its sort of organic flavor and feeling. So what I want to do is I want to automate very slightly the tempo map of this composition to draw out some of those longer notes and make it sort of flow in a more natural way. So I'm just going to do that now. So I go View, Tempo Envelope in Reaper. What I can do is I can automate, like you might automate the volume, I can automate the tempo to flow between different parts. Now, Reaper does a strict tempo change, but you can just double click on the tempo and you can actually select gradually transition to tempo to next marker. It does that for you. And then you can change it back. So put another tempo. Bring that back up to 60. And same here, you just do a gradual tempo change. All right, let me just automate this and I'll bring it back. So I've automated the tempo at certain points to draw out certain sections before they flow into the next sections, and you'll hear how that creates this kind of push and pull. It gets it out of the rigidity of a strict BPM, which is how orchestras and how strings actually sound like, how string players really play. Okay, I've automated the tempo now, but before we hear that, let's hear the composition as it started before we did anything at all. And then I'm going to play the composition with the dynamic changes, the expression changes, and the tempo changes to compare the difference. So let's hear the composition before we did anything. Okay, And now let's hear the composition with the changes we've made. Night and day, if you ask me. So yeah, most MIDI string instruments, if they're good, they'll have both dynamics and expressions as a variability, something that you can change. And then the tempo, well, the tempo map is built into your DAW. So this is a pretty easy and accessible way of transforming some pretty sort of stale and static strings into something that has some flow and some sort of natural qualities to it. If you're curious to pick up BBC's Symphony Orchestra by Spitfire Audio, you can download it for free. It's in my free guide, which is called Free Plugins Every Producer, Composer and Musician Should Know About. You can find that guide for free in the description of this video. Yeah, it's a great starting place if you haven't used orchestral strings and you don't want to pay ridiculous money for it. You can get these for free. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you in whatever I make next. Cheers.